One big thing that you have to understand about escaping the mount is that, Lawrence, climb up a little higher on the mount. Guys, if I do not have my elbows on the inside of my partner's thighs, there are no reliable mount escapes. Just remember that in your head. The best thing that you can do when you have your elbows not in is like an explosive bridge, and maybe you can get somebody to fall over, but that's not a reliable strategy. You always, if you want a good mount escape, you have to battle your elbows to the inside position, inside of your partner's knees. Right now, Lawrence is up underneath my elbows, so in this situation, I would need to get those back in, and we can do like a basic shoulder walk out to get our elbows in, but here's a really good detail. Actually, slap really high, Lawrence. If you're ever like something like this, guys, if you have your arms up like this and you're trying to shoulder walk out, you're kind of pushing at the hips here, and it's hard to slide out from underneath this guy if I'm stuck like this. So one really good tip to get yourself to where you can get those elbows in a little easier is I like to bring my elbows all the way down to the floor, and then look at that. Just that, pushing down at the knees rather than the hips with my arms. His knees are anchored to the floor, and I'm like shooting myself out at the end of the lever down here, and it's really, really powerful. Do that one more time. So if you're ever in a position, instead of going here and trying to shoulder walk out, the Lawrence is kind of just resisting and riding with it. When I do that, you guys see how much it kind of shoots me out a little easier. Once I get here, it's always a battle. We're always working, trying to get those elbows inside of the knees. These frames, they allow me to keep Lawrence down on my hips now, which is another very important thing to understand. And now I can start to work into some type of an escape. There's a handful of really good escapes. I think the most powerful, my favorite set of escapes are all escapes that put me into a half guard, okay? What that's gonna do is that it's gonna involve me turning and framing on one of my partner's legs. So whenever I go to frame on somebody's leg and hip, I always wanna make sure that I'm working to off balance this person. If this person's sitting straight up and down right here on my hips, not only does he have good balance, he doesn't have to worry about anything, he can now use his hands to start to, choke me, grab my arms, he can start to pull my elbows out from underneath his elbows, all this stuff. So if I can get my elbows in, the first thing you always have to do is off balance the person quickly. There's a few different ways, just kind of depending on the situation. One of my favorites is off of a failed trap and roll. But if I'm not into the escape first, I'm just gonna have my hands on the hips and I'm just gonna work to off balance him by arching and pushing, okay? Once I can get somebody off balance, posting their hand on the mat, they're heavy on one knee, now I'm gonna start to work, let's turn it. I'm gonna start working that same side leg inside of his foot. So now my leg has inside position on his foot, my elbows have inside position on his knee. I'm always gonna be pushing, framing here. Very important when I turn that my frame is in the right spot. So just kind of raise up. Look at my frame across the hip, my frame inside of the knee along the femur. My elbow, super important that I never let my elbow start to drift to the middle. As soon as that elbow passes, now my back's exposed. So while you're drilling this, just make sure you're exaggerating, keeping that elbow on the hip. My two hands kind of join up on the corner of the hip here, my elbow's inside. You can go ahead and put your hand back down. Now we're in this position, now I can start to work one of my escapes to half guard. I'm gonna show 3 different ways. They all put you in the same position, but it's just, you have to kind of know all of these because you might get stuck if you don't know all 3. The first one is as I'm pushing, if I can shrimp, if I can create this big gap inside of my partner's leg, it's very simple to bring your knee inside of your elbow. Okay, so now I have this position. From here, usually they're pinching their knees. They start driving back into you. I push my knee forward and drive my leg out, turn my hip, and now we're in half guard with the underhook. So option 1, I got them over here. I shrimp, the knee comes in the middle, connecting to the elbow. They're usually pushing back into you. I drive that knee forward, hip escape, lock the figure 4. Option 2, maybe his knee isn't opening wide, but I've got inside position and I'm pushing. Now his ankle is exposed. You guys see his ankle? I now have access to that ankle. I can drive my knee out underneath, reach over and catch it and drag it in. You guys probably have all seen this. This is usually my favorite one that I teach. Once you get that ankle, now we have to do a forward shrimp to get that knee off the floor to get the half guard. So my toes reach out, forward shrimp to get the knee up, get my leg out, that same hip escape and turn when I have to. Option 3, say he is so tight with his knees here that when I try to shrimp, it's like I can't open that space. Maybe his foot is up to where I just like on the ground, just like higher. Maybe I can't get to his ankle. In this situation, everything's so tight, I don't feel like those other two are gonna work. I'm making sure my elbow stays on that hip and I can shrimp. You see what happened when he shrimped? Watch that again. When I shrimp, his knee comes off the floor about that far. And there's my escape. The one big thing you just have to be careful with right there is that you don't expose your back. So if he's super tight, I got elbow, don't let your elbow come across because then he can sit to your back. As long as your elbow's here, I can shrimp, knee comes out, great. If he tries to sit to my back, try to sit, really try to take it, look. He couldn't because of the elbow. Does that make sense? If I can shrimp, create the space inside, knee in. Usually they're pinching and driving into you. Drive your knee forward, tap it. Option 2, if I can find that foot. That's pretty easy. Grab it, drag it in. My toes reach out for a forward shrimp, which raises the knee. Option 3, I'm trying to shrimp, but damn, Lawrence has been doing squats or something. I can't get to the foot maybe. Sometimes, guys, flatten your foot. Sometimes you're like digging and it's just taking too long. If that's ever the case, I just shrimp. Look at that knee.
What's the difference between the first one and third one again? I know you shrimp on both of them.
The first one, I opened up a gap in between his knee.
Oh, okay, so you're going inside.
Knee comes in.
The butterfly.
Yeah,
bar.
yeah. If you can't get a separation there, just shrimp. Try to get their knee to pop off the ground. Ready? 1, 2. Whenever you turn, we don't want to like have our frame in, but kind of be on our back. Whenever I turn, I'm fully committed to my side, right? And now with that frame in, that elbow stays in, I can start to work things. I'm not in danger of getting my back taken as long as my arm is there. On the third one, you have to make more of a turn. If I shrimp right now, it's along the floor, right? That's good for the first one where I opened his knee up and then found the gap. On the third one, I need to be able to lift them up. So what I'm gonna have to do, my hips have to do the work. If I shrimp here, there's no lift. I have to go here and shrimp. You see that? Whenever I turn belly down and shrimp my butt backwards, it's gonna lift their butt. That's when that gap comes open right here underneath that knee, and I slide my knee through and turn. Does that make sense? So in order to get their hips up, Jaden, can I use you real fast? Jaden's gonna mount me. He's got everything super tight. Whenever I turn, look, you see that? Now his knee is off the floor, and here I am, mount. The only big risk about that is that if my elbow's not in the right spot, if I go here, Jaden can sit to my back, and then he can turn and take my back. You guys see? So, you know that you have to overcommit to make this work, as long as you keep your elbow in the right spot. Now when he sits to my back, sit hard, do it hard, sit hard, look, go ahead, keep going. Look, end up here. So, it's safe as long as you keep your elbow in the right spot, but you gotta turn a little further than you really want to. Ready? 1, 2.